Today is Ash Wednesday. Today we come together to acknowledge our mortality. Today we come together to hear Corinthians tell us about how to love one another. We see in our gospel reading that Jesus cautions us against using our faith to build up ourselves. One of the best things I ever heard is that real disciples of Jesus, they are always pointing the way to Jesus. People who are practicing their faith, who are in it for themselves, are always saying, look at me, I'm the best prayer. Look at me, I'm the most spiritual. Look at me, I know the Bible the best. We are invited today to make sure that we are the disciples who are always pointing people to Jesus. You are not in it to make a name for ourselves. You aren't in it to make a profit, but who are in it to invite others into a life saving relationship with Jesus. And I'm going to be honest, in today's world, that gets very, very complicated. Because here's the thing, if all of the disciples had prayed in secret 100% of the time, the message of Jesus would never have spread, and we would not be here 2,000 years later worshiping that same Jesus. There were times that the disciples prayed in public and practiced their faith in public. But the question is, when we do things, do we help people find Jesus in the ways that we do them? Or do we simply help people find ourselves and help them be attracted to us instead of to Jesus? This is a trap that we all fall into, and I think is exactly the one that Jesus was cautioning us to. Jesus invites us also today to know where our treasure is. Our treasure isn't in making a name for ourselves out there. Our treasure is inside of us. And don't get me wrong, when we have that treasure deep inside of us, we absolutely need to be willing to share that with others, or the message of Jesus would never go anywhere. On the day that we celebrate our mortality, we are in a really unique position to invite people into a life saving relationship with Jesus. We can say, hey, I know death, and I know this person named Jesus who knows death. I also know resurrection. I also know new life. The reason that we can celebrate our mortality, the reason that we can celebrate all of the ways that God comes to us, is because we know mortality. If there's no mortality, if we were all going to live forever, nothing would matter. We would do whatever we wanted, however we wanted, and it wouldn't matter. We wouldn't need to work on behalf of our neighbors to make sure that they had the basic resources to live their lives. We wouldn't have to work together to protect one another. We are invited at the beginning of Lent into a deeper, more solid relationship with Jesus, into a relationship with Jesus that gets us way deep down in our heart when we are in private, and then allows us to go out into the world serving our neighbors and saying, hey, I'm serving you because of Jesus. Hey, I can accompany you through this really terrible thing or into this place of death because I know that resurrection is coming, and I know that the life of Jesus is possible for you. This is a tricky year to enter into Lent. And so I want to invite you today into a set of spiritual practices that will help ground you in who you are as a disciple of Jesus. Each week during Lent, during our midweek services at 7:30, we'll do Holden evening prayer. And each week we will explore in particular one of our senses and how we can use that sense to notice God. For Lent, I want to invite us into this journey of deeply noticing God, noticing where God is, noticing how God works. Because it is then, when we have done the work in private, that we can be prepared to share that with others. And so sometimes this is really easy. For example, sometimes I'm able to look out my window at the snow and be like, we are going to have the most beautiful flowers because the ground is the most wet. The snow is actually God preparing the ground for flowers because there will be so much moisture soaked into many, many feet of ground, probably. There are, of course, other times I look out the window and I think, oh no, not more snow. But the question is, how can we look at the things around us? How can we touch the things around us? How can we touch the snow? How can we touch the dirt? How can we touch one another? How can we smell the communion wine and bread? How can we feel the ashes on our forehead tonight and know that we have a God who is absolutely present in this world, who is absolutely present, not just in the hereafter, not just on a day we're talking about our mortality, not just after we die. We get to know God here and now. We get to see God in the faces on Zoom. We get to see God in each other. We get to notice how God works through the internet, which is something that many of us have not practiced noticing God before. There are all kinds of ways to notice where God is and how God is working in the world. There are people who are crying out for justice. There are people who don't have their basic human needs met. And one of the ways that we can notice where God is we can notice the people who are working to make sure that everybody has their basic human needs met. We can notice the healthcare workers. We can notice also very, very simple things. In the world that we're living in, it can be sometimes hard to remember that sometimes our pets are symbols of God's unconditional love and care or laughter in our lives. I know many people who have gotten new pets during the pandemic, and that has brought a lot of laughter. We are invited to notice God. And so here's the thing that we often do during Lent, which is the concept of giving something up. So Jesus talks about giving up, showing off your faith in a way that points to you instead of Jesus. We are invited to look at our mortality and know that what we say and do here on earth matters because this is the only life that we get. You are invited to give up ignoring God. We all do it. We all get busy. We all, some of us on this call even are working from home and repeating third grade again because it's virtual school. Some of us are busy doing all kinds of other things. And we forget to look out the window once a day and be like, dear God, thank you for preparing the ground for the flowers. We forget to hold dirt in our hands or to hold the ashes and know that God is saying your body, your earthly body, will eventually turn to ash. But that's great because that means that it matters. It matters now. The words we speak to our neighbors and our loved ones matter. The way that we treat one another matters. You are invited to notice God in a much more deep way than normal. And let's be honest, that's not necessarily sustainable, but it is sustainable for the 6 weeks of Lent. You are invited into this very deep practice of noticing God in all of the places and all of the ways so that you are absolutely able to be the kind of disciple that is always pointing others directly to the Jesus who comes and offers us life out of death, who offers us resurrection out of the tomb, and promises to always be with us and walk with us as we learn to notice where God is and care for our neighbors this Lent. Thanks be to God. Amen.